this high spending, fast growing market needs to be part of India's growth strategy for tourism.
The image of India in China on social media pretty negative. I think that's why it's so urgent to let someone go to India, especially the one who would like to take the journey, can be treated as a big fan of the India culture.
I think for the long term, we could still be optimistic. For short term, the rebound could be slower than expected due to this substitution effect.
From a Chinese tourist point of view, safety becomes a big paramount issue that India needs to address.
Maybe Chinese tourists and Indians are not aware of is actually there's a linguistic barrier.
We needed to have more social media exposure.
The Chat Lounge. Chat Lounge.
Chat Lounge.
The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Welcome to the Chat Lounge. I'm Zhang. Joining me to discuss India fully restoring global visa services for Chinese travelers, Wenjuan Professor, Jindal Global Law School of India and Senior Counsel, Beijing Zhicheng Law Firm, China. Subramania Bhatt, founder and CEO of China Trading Desk, and Xirui, a political science PhD candidate, Department of Politics and Public Administration, University of Hong Kong. A warm welcome to you all. So Xirui, can we begin with you? Would you please tell us briefly, when did you last apply for an Indian visa? How long did the whole process take, and was it complicated?
Sure, thank you for having me. So last time I applied was prior to 2019, I think. It was before the suspension, and it roughly take me like 2 to 3 weeks to pick up my visa at the Beijing embassy.
Right. Was the whole process complicated, or you find it's really simple?
I think it was okay. I apply online and submit my application, and I get notified to collect my visa. It went smoothly.
Okay, thanks. Wenjuan, I understand you're currently now in India, right?
My experience is a little bit complicated. My last application for visa happened more than 2 years ago for employment visa. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the visa. It has been over 2 years.
So you're currently in China instead of India?
Yes.
So what's your general feeling about the application process? Is it, like Xirui just mentioned, it's not too complicated according to your latest experience?
I think compared to tourist visa, employment visa would be a little bit more complicated, but usual for any country. This is my third time to apply employment visa. But according to the policy, if you got a visa, you have 4 times the review in India, and then you need to go back to your home country to reapply the visa. So this is my first time. Compared to my 2 previous experience, this is unusual. It usually takes 2 months. But this time, even though I have all the documents ready, I still need to wait for over 2 years. Even today, I didn't know whether I could get it or not.
Well,
yeah, uncertain situation.
Right. I guess quite a number of Chinese visitors to India could face the same situation, like you just mentioned. But to Subu, how is this global rollout different from the visa resumption India introduced in July? Can you briefly explain it to us? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think what's changed is both the timing and the scope. So initially, when they opened up in July, it was a very quiet restart of tourist visas, but only through its missions in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. And that was also after 5 years of freeze with the COVID and then the border clash, etc. But the new step goes quite further, right? So now Indian embassies and consulates worldwide are now allowed to issue tourist visas to Chinese nationals wherever they are. So this makes it easy for Chinese citizens living in or working in third countries like Singapore, UAE, UK. It becomes a lot more easier. So we are now moving from a very limited reopening inside China to full global access. And the return of e-visas, e-tourist visas also makes it much more easier. So politically, I think that's India signaling that they're ready to welcome normal people-to-people travel.
Then why did India choose this particular moment to act, not earlier, not later? Some say it comes after some of 500,000 Chinese tourists cancel their trips to Japan. Is there any, to any extent related to this development?
Right. I would take that more as a coincidence rather than a concrete, more of a geopolitical play. I think a lot of things were coming together when China did this, India did this latest move, right? So I think first is obviously the security tension, which from the borders have cooled down quite a bit after several rounds of talks. So I think Delhi feels safer taking a visible confidence step. The second is this has been debated quite a while in India. Again, economics plays quite a big part. Right, foreign tourist arrival to India is below 2019. Not just the Chinese, right, but overall, from almost 11 million that was before COVID, and the Chinese were close to about 340,000 people. I think the last count is just about 30,000 or something. So very, very minimal Chinese coming back. And the third point, I think, is also diplomacy, right? China's outbound tourism has been recovering quite a bit. We estimate it to reach about 160 million this year in 2025, surpassing COVID times, before COVID, 2019 times. So this is going to be the highest number of Chinese traveling outside of China. And pretty much India has missed out then. If India waits longer, Chinese travelers are going to just become more used to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. So they should not be waiting anymore. And they feel that, this high spending, fast growing market needs to be part of India's growth strategy for tourism.
Right.
So I think that's the main reason they quickly realized that this would be easier for them to get more Chinese to come in.
Xirui, what's your interpretation? Is New Delhi prioritizing economic needs, diplomatic recalibration, or a boost to its soft power image?
I definitely buy explanation, and it's definitely this calculation. Also, I think because China earlier has also resumed the visa to processing for the Indian tourists who want to went on a trek around the Himalayas, which is an important religious area. As China has also made that move, it has come to India's turn to do this this lifting as well. So I think it's a natural step by step.
Right. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think China resumed visas for Indian visitors in 2023, a little bit earlier than India. So, Subu, what do you think this move actually signal? The confidence on the Indian side that it can go back on the right track, if you will, in terms of relations with China, or anything else that you can read from, this move?
I think, I think one of the pressures is also that, China has been opening up quite a bit in terms of not just Indians, but a lot of foreigners coming into China. A lot of visa-free policies have happened, and this is in stark contrast to what India does, right? So India will still bogged down by very strict rules on even visitor visas. So I think that has also had some impact in terms of how Indians view the overall market of overseas travelers coming into India, especially if the tourists are going into a big neighboring country like China and not visiting India. That would impact them quite a bit. I think that's one of the reasons I would also say that they wanted to expand and include China as part of the visa policy. And with that, I think they would want to start reciprocating, being able to build out a better relationship between China and India. again, these two are the biggest, both in landmass and in population, the biggest countries within Asia continent and their neighbors. So they would want to have exchange of both people and technology and commerce so that they can both flourish together.
But is the reopening limited to tourist visas, according to your knowledge? Because, Wenjuan just mentioned she's met some problem there.
Yeah, I would say this new policy is focused on tourist visa.
Right.
They've already, I would say they've already opened up other categories, like student visa, business, work, and medical visas have been opened. Obviously, there is a lot of friction in terms of how approval takes place and the amount of documentations required, etc., to get that process going. But this latest move itself is just focused on tourist visa to make it easier for people to apply, especially through e-visa online with less, I
Right.
wouldn't say necessarily less document, but with less friction to get that sorted out.
Mm.
Because everything comes online and you can do it from anywhere you are, it should make it easier.
Then what does the remaining patchwork of restrictions tell us about how far India is willing to go in easing tensions then?
Yeah, I think there's still quite a bit of geopolitical concerns that's driving some of those decisions, right? So the commerce part, especially the investment side, where it is still a bit more difficult for Chinese companies to invest directly into India right now. And in terms of business to business cooperation, it's also a bit being calibrated a bit slowly. They do not want overflow of both funds and people to India to the perceived detrimentalism of local employment, right? So that's something that they keep highly cautious about. But I think the other favorable India-China collaboration would also be that the tariff imposed by US is also taking quite a bit of an impact on India, right? It has fluctuated with different rates and now it's staying at 50%, which is not most optimal for Indians. So I think that might also make it more practical for India to think that, what is more important is the growth of the country and increasing the commerce and trade values. So they might look at more favorable ways to make sure that even business and employment and education visas get faster processing done.
The Chat Lounge. The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Anyway, the restrictions for at least Chinese tourists are eased now. Then next is whether the Indian side could actually draw as many Chinese tourists as they wish with this new move. Let's talk a little bit about the practical challenges. Xirui, you said last time you got a visa before the COVID pandemic, right, in 2019. So
Yes.
at that time, can you tell us a little bit how the application process you have to go through and what documents do Chinese tourists actually need to submit?
Sure. So it was a little bit different. There's a nuance here is because last time, actually, I decided to went on a short visit, but most Chinese tourists applying now actually tourist visa. But I think they overlap on documents. So let's take Shanghai consulate for example. They have a also WeChat account and website, and it reads that we need, for example, the application form. You have to fill it out. You have to photocopy your passport, your Chinese ID, your tour ticket, plane ticket, like your economic status guarantee and the proof of employment. Also, sometimes bank statement, and also some additional form for foreigners that everyone needs to, to sign. And there are some special rules. For example, you have to wait at least 2 months minimum interval before re-entry to India if you are a Chinese citizen, holding a tourist visa.
Right. Is it, from what I learned, is that in Shanghai, to get a tourist visa to India could take over 2 months. Is that so, to your knowledge?
I think before November, before this resumption, I guess yes. So it's really quite a long time. And I have a lot of cohorts and peers who need to study in India and they have to wait several months. That's true.
Right.
That's true. But now the application process is that's much quicker. But I think that's the de jure time, not necessarily the de facto time you need for the process.
All right. So, Subu, do you think after this global resumption, things would get better? Or,
Yeah, I would think that it certainly would get better because there is now a dispersal of where the applications can happen. So with the global expansion, it certainly helps to distribute the load across, the missions instead of forcing everybody to just go to Beijing or Shanghai to directly apply. And like I mentioned before, I think for eligible travelers, the e-tourist visa is fully online, so you can just upload all documents and photo, although there are very strict conditions about documents and photo size, etc. But it becomes quite easy to just apply everything online and receive an electronic authorization. So certainly, I think it's going to be easier than before in terms of fast application and hopefully fast approval across the globe when people are, especially when people Chinese from Singapore or Middle East where they are working, easier for them to apply.
then do you think those embassy staff, they would prioritize tourist visa when compared to like Wenjuan's work visa, tourist visa would come, first?
I would think that tourist visa probably will likely be a bit more highly prioritized than work visas. Primarily, like I said, the number of tourists has not been as high before. So tourism revenue is always quite welcome. Right before the pandemic, on average, Chinese used to spend about $1,700 when they visited India. Right, so that's quite a decent number in terms of direct consumption, and there is such auxiliary multipliers that would probably even have higher revenue that would go it into the Indian coffers. So definitely they would prefer to see more tourists coming in. Again, like I mentioned, work visas is going to be a bit more cautious in terms of how many they apply. So tourist visas are going to be much easier, and they would definitely want to fill the gap of please trying to reach the pre-pandemic level of tourists coming in, so that they can push for more revenue to come into some tourism side.
Right. Wenjuan, have you ever, applied for a tourist visa? Go to India with a tourist visa. Are there any obvious differences between a tourist visa and a work visa?
Unfortunately, I have never applied it for it. Yeah, because yeah, and it's just a job bring me to India, and since then I always apply the employment visa. And employment visa, once you get it, you have the 4 times renew in India. But I think, as Subramania mentioned, the tourist visa should be a priority. I think that's true, since the two big nations, two big neighboring countries have been kind of separated or decoupled for too long from the people-to-people contact perspective. I think tourist visa needed to be restored as soon as possible. And also, compared to other visas, the tourist visa had been officially announced to be frozen. So that's why for other visas, they have not been frozen. It's just through internal control, right, to make it not too easy. But they have never kind of officially announced that visa, this type of visa has been frozen. But tourist visa has been frozen officially. I think that's the reason why it should be a top priority. And then the second type of visa also need to get attention, the student visa or scholar visa. In China, we're enhancing the communication with India. Many universities have this language, Hindi, Bengali, Tamil. So these students studied this language and they need the opportunity to get a tent in India. But very few of them could get a visa. I think, yeah, in the last 2 or 1 year, it's become better, but still it's not kind of enough for the students to who want to go to India and they have a strong feeling or kind of a cultural affiliation with India, they should get a visa easier. Otherwise, they will be very discouraged. After learning this language, they can never go to India or can they make applicable.
Yeah, that's for students, right? They need to get student visas.
Yeah,
Mm.
student scholar, some research, some scholars focus on Indian studies, and I think they feel a little bit kind of, they don't know how to explain the feeling. They have a strong kind of affiliation connection with this country, but they cannot get a visa to study.
Yeah, they feel like they are overlooked or maybe discriminated against.
Yeah, it's very strange feeling for many of these student scholars. I think, it's not easy to get a visa. I think the most challenging time, the Chinese students in India, not usual for such a two big countries with such a big number of youth population.
But maybe they can have that better sorted out when India is more confident or feels more comfortable to accept more Chinese students or scholars. But now we come back and focus on this tourist visa. Actually, India resumed this tourist visa for Chinese travelers back in July. That's first time in 5 years. According to a managing director of a travel agency, Cosmos Travels and Tours in India, the initial mood was upbeat. The announcement of visa resumption gave everyone in the travel trade a sense of normalcy, as though they were finally pressing reset on the India-China travel market. But that optimism remained only in the headlines because the systems on the ground have simply not kept pace. So, Subu, though we've got this global resumption, do you have any concern that the result might not be that rosy like New Delhi would like to see? Do you see any bottlenecks, or where might the bottlenecks appear, like visa center staffing, appointment availability, or processing times?
Yeah, I think all those points are quite valid. Yeah, like you said, the headlines usually move faster than the reality, right? So while it is very welcome, I think that the reality of how it is going to be implemented, how the bureaucratic staff at the consulate would actually get that approval process and timing right would be one of the biggest factors to see whether they will be able to, increase the approval of these tourist visas. In addition to that, I think another big barrier is also the travel corridor itself. Right now, there's only 2 flights that have been approved, so there's not much connectivity yet available between India and China. So we need to bring that up to, having all the visas approved and low capacity on airlines to travel still means people can't travel. So it's going to be quite difficult if you don't have, straight travel from, say, Beijing to Mumbai or Beijing to Delhi, which are some of the biggest cities that Chinese are interested to travel to. So if you don't have that connectivity readily available and easily available and cheap, the Chinese tourists are just going to fall back to traveling to Southeast Asia and Korea, and where it is much more easier and faster to travel to.
This has been the Chat Lounge. When we return, check out the biggest factors holding Chinese travelers back and what Indian authorities could do to move the needle.
Tales of Chinese Children is a collection of fairy tales and fables written by Edith Eaton, one of the first Asian American women writers from the turn of the 20th century. Edith focused on children who were treasured.
They are the sweetest gift of all.
Lost.
Get away from me! Get away from me!
Or misunderstood.
My son, the evil spirit in your sister had almost lost you to me.
In the complicated adult world, and much more. Search for Books and Beyond on radio.cgtn.com and all major podcast platforms. to delve into an audio journey which allows the sound to linger around and above you for stunning realism.
Welcome back to the Chat Lounge. We continue our chat on whether the full resumption of visas is enough to rekindle Chinese travel to India. Xirui, what's your expectation? Can we expect a quick rebound in Chinese tourist numbers, or is the move still largely symbolic for now?
Thank you. So, I think for the long term, we could still be optimistic, but for short term, I think a change we have between, the pre-pandemic and now is that actually many popular tourist destinations in countries like Singapore, Qatar, they are now like visa-free to Chinese citizens. For example, you can go to a short visit to Singapore now. So there's a strong substitution effect for India now. Even if India signal its sincerity by lifting the visa restrictions, but now Chinese citizens actually have more options compared to what they have in 2019. So people always prefer less troubling and visa-free destinations. So the rebound could be lowered or slower than expected due to this substitution effect. And as Zuba has just mentioned, is that, Chinese tourists spend on average maybe at least 1,000 to 2,000 US dollars per person during the visit. So that's no less, cheaper than other popular destinations. So there will be a rebound, but it may, not as drastically as we could expect.
Then how big is the potential market if barriers are lowered in the long run, would you say?
If we could ever get close to what we have in the 2019, that being said, is more than 300,000 visit, that would account for roughly 3% of the foreign tourists visiting India. So if we don't have that much, maybe less than 3%, but still that's a big chunk of cake for the tourism in India.
Subu, what's your estimation then?
Yeah, what you mentioned, I think 2019 was about 340,000, but it's been gone down quite a bit. But I think India needs to look at it from a different perspective. We estimate that, this year, like I said, we're expecting 160 million travelers from China to travel out, and that's expected to hit about 200 million by 2028. But if India wants to even get 1% of that by 2028, that's 2 million Chinese going to India, right? So the potential is huge, right? So even, and I think it's not very difficult to get that 1% of Chinese travelers. It's obviously, it takes a lot of work in terms of building the infrastructure, building the connectivity, building probably even doing away with visa requirement and making sure that it becomes seamless and easy for the Chinese to travel. And we know that, when Chinese travel, they spend a lot, right? And most of the recent studies have shown that Chinese are looking for more experiential travel. So, it's not just about going to Paris and going to Louis Vuitton stores and buying fancy bags. It's more about identifying more authentic travel experiences, getting something unique. I think there's a lot that India can offer in terms of Buddhism traveling, in terms of yoga, in terms of a different natural resource and safaris, etc. So there's plenty of things that India can offer that would entice the Chinese. And I think aiming for even a 1% by 2030, which would be more than 2 million, is not something that is impossible for India.
Then from your perspective, what are the biggest factors or the biggest factor holding Chinese travelers back?
Right. I think from both sides, there's going to be some issues. I think first, from a Chinese tourist point of view, there is constant news about safety issues in India. So we've seen so many videos, even of Westerners who go to India and then talk about how difficult, theft and to a certain extent, some molestations, etc., that harassments that happen. But I think safety becomes a big paramount issue that India needs to address. Cleanliness is something else that also keeps getting highlighted by a lot of people on social media. And that's something that India also needs to address. Then there is the associated with that is things like, overcharging, people prying on tourists, especially by, just either to a certain extent, they are begging, borderline harassing people to give them money for free without doing anything. So there's all these things that still keeps happening, even though we wish it is not the case. But I think that's something that social media keeps amplifying about India, and that needs to be addressed quite a bit before IAs would feel more comfortable to get to that level of travel. Not impossible, but I think it's a task that they need to address head on.
Right. And Wenjuan, do you have a different view here?
Yeah, first I think definitely people would like to with the easier with the free tourist destination. But I also think India had some their own comparative advantages. Like you would see the Buddhism followers, they really actually India have very good travel program, travel plan. I remember the train you can go to 21 days, you can go to different Buddhism sites. It's very well designed program. I know many Buddhism followers really want that program. You also see research many places. There's the yoga practitioners who want to go to India, stay for a while, and it's very colorful, very culturally rich, and also medical travelers. I think that's also the advantage of India. So I think India has lots of resources to build this tourism market. But I also agree that, as Subramania mentioned, like the social media really show that India is not a big country, especially for women. Also, for the transparent, I think the visa process, I think many feel it's like very, the process is not transparent. And the document list, and you don't know whether you meet the requirement or not. And also, only Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and the other, we travel a long distance to have this visa. I think all this may be the devoted, like Buddhism followers or yoga practitioners. They really want to go to India. They would like to take the process. They feel so exhausted. Now we India have a digital India, right? So that the transformation. I also personal feel there are lots of technology improvement for the bureaucratic management. For example, the FRO, like visa extension. Before, we also need to visit the local police station, but now it's being taken by the daily, so online, very easier. I think India might also use this system to the travelers, Chinese travelers, like unique transparent, the wholly calculated document, and then all the people can upload online and then you approve. If you really want the interview, you have the interview, but you don't let this document not meet the requirement, that document not meet the requirement. You need to run many wrong to like this very uncertain, not transparent.
All right, Wenjuan, I can actually feel your frustration there. And it's also the frustration suffered by a lot of tourism business operators in India. Then, Xirui, beyond streamlining paperwork, like Wenjuan just mentioned, and improving security mentioned by Subu just now, what else do you think India must improve with a long-term target to become a top 5 destination for Chinese tourists?
Yes. So I would like to highlight a factor that many, maybe Chinese tourists and Indians are not aware of is actually there's a linguistic barrier for most Chinese tourists who travel to India. If you look at the Indian diaspora in China and the Chinese tourists who visit India, their linguistic infrastructure is actually different. Many Indian businessmen and businesswomen, they go to China doing trade or business or study here, they speak English, right? And, there are more Indian people who learn Chinese than Chinese people who learn Hindi and Bengali. So most Indian people who visit China, either they speak English or they speak Chinese to some degree. So there's no such high linguistic barrier. So there are a lot of Indian people visiting China. But on the contrary, most, not all Chinese tourists speak English. Some middle-aged tourists who went to college, maybe they study Russian at that time, not English. And, some Chinese tourists maybe just speak Chinese. They probably don't know English. If you go to local shops, markets, hotels, not all Indians speak English. Many of them speak Hindi, speak Urdu or Bengali. They don't know English. So it is hard if you don't know the local language. So there would be a linguistic barrier. So what I would say is that for the most popular tourist sites that Chinese tourists would visit, say the Nat or the Deer Garden where Buddha taught his students, or the Ganges or some New Delhi or the Taj Mahal, these popular tourist sites, they could incorporate better Chinese infrastructure. Say you have Chinese version of a tourist guide, you have translation, and you have some maybe more Chinese restaurants who accept Chinese payment.
Right.
That would make India definitely more popular and more convenient for Chinese tourists.
Right, some good suggestions. And Subu, could strong tourism promotion campaigns inside China move the needle? Or do you have any other better ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all great valid points from Xirui. I think these are very important. But I think the first fundamental step is to rapidly scale the flight connectivity, right? Like I mentioned earlier, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou to Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata would be a great start. And then having some flights to the Buddhist circuits could make it very important and easier for people to plan their itineraries, right? So that would be a first thing. And obviously, having Alipay, WeChat Pay integrated into the ecosystem would greatly help, right? Mandarin speaking, etc. Like you mentioned, I think if you're not on social media, are you really in the world, right? So I was recently in India, and then when I opened my Zhang app and I was looking for nearby, and the only thing it says is there's nothing nearby, right? So that makes a bigger point that a lot needs to be on social media. People are getting inspirations on Zhang, people are booking their trips on Sea Trip, people are planning their itinerary and looking at what is available on Morph Word. So and you have to be on these platforms. You have to do a big rollout, make sure that there is high visibility among Chinese about different attractions that's available. And only then I think the scaling would be possible to do.
Maybe India can learn something from Thailand, right? They had their king in China to promote Thailand tourism recently. Probably, Prime Minister.
Yeah, Modi can use his absolutely. And I think with AI and stuff, you could even get that into being more seamlessly and translated to Mandarin and get at least put the effort in that would show the appreciation from the Chinese side to be more willing to travel to India.
Right.
Definitely.
The Chat Lounge. The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Wenjuan, what's your advice here, apart from the visa application being more transparent?
I agree with the Subramania mentioned. So you needed to have more social media exposure. I mean, like the Chinese people, right? So it's not nowadays the social media exposure by India is really it's negative. But I think if people has the opportunity, at least you need to let some people who really want to go to India and make their trip journey a little bit easier, and then they may kind of people to people. This will be widespread, and even some influencers, if they can go to India, especially they can show the richness of the Indian culture on social media. It will kind of, you need a balanced image. Nowadays, I think because the closure of the visa, especially tourist visa, and the cutoff of the people-to-people contacts, the image of India in China on social media pretty negative. I think that's why it's so urgent to let someone go to India, especially the one who would like to take the journey, can be treated as a big fan of the India culture. Let their journey easier.
Right. And let's move on to the last part, the long-term impact of this move. I think you all actually touched upon a little bit on this. It's seen as part of a broader effort to normalize bilateral ties between the two countries after a period of tension. So, how much can it actually strengthen people-to-people exchange? Can we start from Wenjuan?
Yeah. So because I used to work as a faculty of the university, so through the student exchange, for example, we have the immersion program. So we let the Chinese students to go to India. We have arranged like go to the court, to the parliament to meet the people, the village people, and we also have the lecture about India culture, religion, politics, and to give them a full immersion of this India. So many of them, most of them actually, the first time to go to India, I think they changed their perception of India. So I think the people-to-people contact is so fundamental to bring the understanding and also especially the perception of the other culture in a more human, him kind of a humanitarian. It's a human to human connection. It's not through this word language, especially nowadays, disinformation, misinformation, really create kinds of lots of hurdles, enlarge the hurdles for people to contact. So we needed to open this physical space for people to feel contact. And then the misunderstanding, the distrust can be lowered or removed even. So that's why I think the two countries, especially for neighboring countries, you can never close the door from each other. You need to be friendly and try to be open-minded and try to respect the diversity and to learn how to coexist with each other in a connected way, not in an isolated way.
I believe the two peoples, Indians and Chinese, they've got ancient wisdoms. I think they can sort this out. And Xirui, your take here, please.
Yeah, it's definitely a concrete step towards actually strengthen this people-to-people exchange. I think, but I'm still, have a cautious optimism. So I think by and large, this will still contingent on, the bilateral relations still contingent on some, the territorial issues between China and India. So that being said, of course, we will see a thaw and a rebound of people-to-people exchange. But nowadays, based on our, arrangements, I think it will still suffer from any, potential inadvertent conflicts or escalations in the future. So I think what is more important is that we probably have to, separate people to people exchange from, the high politics. We have to make people exchange, especially visa issues and trade, apolitical, meaning that less sensitive to those political issues. We should not just, lift the visa application or processing just because we have some disagreements on borderland, and we should gradually, especially enable those scholars and students to study and travel across two countries so that we could find more things in common and let those scholars and diplomats or students who research and working on these issues could find a way out, and then we will have a better solution to the territory issues, and we have a more healthy bilateral relations.
But if you say we should distinguish or people-to-people exchanges from geopolitical issues, then could this full restoration of visas become a genuine turning point in China-India relations?
I think yes and no. It's definitely a genuine turning point now because it's not worse enough. It's actually we're now better off, right? So we will see a rebound definitely. But the thing is that it's still quite fragile. So it's going towards the good direction, but we still have, some risks. So if we want to make it really concrete, genuine turning point in the future, we have to come up with some solutions to make sure that those direct flights, visa issues, and students, scholars who travel across two countries and who do business and do trade will not be affected, and they have a stable expectation about bilateral relations, at least in the near future. So people who invest, who study, who trade will expect a very stabilized bilateral relation.
Okay. And Subu, what's your take? What do you think will determine whether this momentum, like Xirui just mentioned, this improved momentum is sustainable, and what risks could derail it?
I think one of the biggest tensions, I would say, is the border management, right? So that is something that is always lingering, right? It's never got resolved. There is no, and there is sort of a truce, but the disengagement and the dialogue on the LAC is very important, right? As long as there is no fresh deadly clashes or standoff, I think that's one of the biggest factors that would keep this moving forward. The second point I would say is, the flow should actually materialize. And then this is where I think we need to see where the rubber meets the road, right? So we need to see whether both sides agree to have more flights, have significant bilateral movements, not just on tourists, but students and investment, and be able to allow both Chinese to visit India and Indians to visit China. So the bilateral movement should become more free, right? And most recently, I think there was this case of Indian passport holder detained in Shanghai over, China's Arunachal Pradesh claims, right? So which again triggered quite a bit of protests within Chinese social media and in India's social media and India's TV stations, etc., right? News media. So I think these small skirmish things that could potentially derail a lot of things. It could be something small that could be isolated, but it might, especially in India, it could be taken out of context and things could get very political very fast, right? So we need to make sure that these things remain quite under the wrap.
Right, makes every sense. Lastly, let's move back to something lighter. Could every one of you provide some advice or suggestion for those who are planning probably their first trip to India, like me? I believe a lot of Chinese are very interested in India. So give us some tips then. Shall we begin with Xirui?
Yeah, so I think it would be impractical to ask someone learn the, language in a short time. That's impractical. My advice would be if we take an analogy, travel to a major country is like a big cake, and maybe you can take it slice by slice, bit by bit. So just forget about what you saw on social media for a while and, design your own trip to maybe one city at a time and just try it first and see how how you like it. And maybe, share your experience to others who haven't tried but are interested. So maybe that kind of, don't let all those information predetermine your mindset, and maybe would make your experience better.
Okay. Wenjuan?
I remember when I visited India for the first time, I talked to many people about the advice. The later, actually, everyone's advice is based on its own or own experience. For example, my trip is for a job. I have never traveled there, and others maybe just for traveling and I think in a group or with a well planned agency be easier for your first trip. I think if you have been there many times, then you have your own individual life. It's just a language application with some minimum English. I even some of my friends who cannot speak English, but he's very good at body language. He'll communicate and other like how to make your trip really rewarding. We need to get prepared.
Right, get prepared and go with the flow. Last but not least, Sivu, please.
Yeah, I think India is really vast and it's really diverse. All right. So there is a lot of different cultures even within the neighboring states. So there's really a lot of things that you can see and do and experience that can even within, two states, you will have such a vast different experience. But I think one thing to be cautious and when you're traveling, especially for first time, is to be prepared, is to research quite a bit and try to find more reputable people that can help you with your travel and itinerary. And lastly, I think in terms of safety and in terms of conversations, I know things like Google Translate really help quite a bit. So even when I travel, sometimes if I need to use in remote parts, some conversations, we could generally use Google Translate to translate between different languages within India. So with English or with Chinese to any of the local languages like Tamil, Malayalam, etc., it becomes a lot more easier and helps to ease that communication barrier between different people. So technology will definitely help, and being going out with more reputable people and especially researching more online before proceeding would definitely help. And there's really a lot of different places that you could potentially see and experience.
Right. What would be your first or number one recommendation, tourist?
So many places, I would say. But I think, if you look at nature and stuff, Kerala, right at the bottom, the south of India, is the backwaters of Kerala is really beautiful. That would definitely be one of the top choices for me to go to if we are going there. Famous places like Taj Mahal would also be, a historical place, that picture perfect Zhang place that you can take and post on your Zhang. All right, those would be again very highly attractive places to go to.
All right, thanks for the tips. And on that note, we wrap up our chat for this session. Many thanks to Subramania, Bhatt, founder and CEO, China Trading Desk, Zhang Wenjuan, Professor Jindal, Global Law School of India and Senior Counsel, Beijing Zhicheng Law Firm, and Gao Xirui, Political Science PhD candidate, Department of Politics and Public Administration, University of Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us, and drop us a line anytime at radio@cgtn.com. We'd love to know what you think. I'm Tuyun. Join us for more chat at the Chat Lounge next week. Talk to you soon.
I cannot marry you while your mother regards me.
Step into the world of timeless elegance with Mrs. Spring Fragrance, a captivating audiobook by Edith Eaton,
Grieves
read
not,
by Man Ling.
because the green leaf still clings to the bough.
Experience the lively yet complex lives in Chinese American communities at the turn of the 20th century as Edith Eaton's delicate prose weaves together themes of tradition, change, love, and identity.
Forget all that belongs to the joy of life.
Follow the journey of Mrs. Spring Fragrance and witness the struggles and fights of those living on a rapidly changing exotic land while holding on to their cultural traditions, or more importantly, to their
He
identities.
could hardly believe that his daughter was seriously opposed to becoming the wife of such a good-looking, prosperous young merchant as Wang Ling.
Join Books and Beyond for Mrs. Spring Fragrance. Let the stories come to life in your imagination. Subscribe to Books and Beyond for free on your favorite podcast platforms or log on to radio.cgtn.com for more.